James 5:17 through 20. Elijah was as human as we are, and yet when he prayed earnestly that no rain would fall, none fell for 3.5 years. Then when he prayed again, the sky sent down rain and the earth began to yield its crops. My dear brothers and sisters, if someone among you wanders away from the truth and is brought back, you can be sure that whoever brings the sinner back will save that person from death and bring about the forgiveness of many sins. A couple weeks ago, we looked at what we need to do to help purify us, because we all know and we all feel deep in our souls, and we can see the signs of the times that there is about to be a huge revival, a serious come to Jesus revival. And we need to get ourselves prepared to be able to talk to everybody. When we were living in sin, we surrendered parts of our soul to Satan. Not the whole thing necessarily, but major parts. And when we ask for forgiveness and we ask God, we ask Him to take back the stuff that was surrendered to Satan. Bring it back to Him. And if we're not careful, well, we know what happens. It could have a chance to let Satan get his little claws in and start taking back over parts of your soul. Last week we looked at freedom. We know that the devil knows and understands that Christ set us free. And because of that, and he sees us getting away, he just doesn't go, oh well, lost another one. He does the silly things of trying to go back after you. And he does it in semi-subtle ways and attacks. And we got to be paying attention to that. But you see, he's really kind of a clever, wily thing. And he's doing things, when I say that he does, these little, subtle attacks. Sometimes they're not so subtle. But I think that it is subtle enough that it pulls your attention away from what he's really doing. Today, let's look at where we stand. Let's look at where we stand. What are some of the gods that we see our generation bowing down to today? Our kids, our everything else. Well, let's see. We've got, those lovely computer games. We've got social media. We've got, a lot of money. People like a lot of money. We have earthly things, sex, pornography. We have the alphabet soup of the LGBTQAI, and we have the CRT, and we have a bunch of other stuff is just too much to name. We'd be here half a morning. But you see, are these subtle attacks? Or are these actually in your face?
Well, they started out subtle, but now they're in your face.
But you see, he's got this other thing. He's drawing our attentions away. You see, we can identify these. We can identify these readily. A couple weeks ago, I was sitting there and I was working on the message and I was looking up some reference stuff, and I read a thing by a guy that wrote, and I can't remember his name and I can't find it again just yet. I'm going to have to go into my computer history. But he talked about something that I didn't think about. I wasn't paying attention or aware enough to even think. So I spent a couple of weeks watching and listening. That thing that most custodians are known for, their sneakiness. I mean, after all, if you ask anybody in a school district, if you need to know what's going on, who do you go see? You go see the custodian, because people talk in front of you. They see you there and they go, oh, it's just Curtis. It's just Jeff. It's just Kelly. It's okay. We can talk in front of them. So we know more dirt that goes on in a school district than anyone else wants to know. Now, most of us are pretty good about keeping what we hear to ourselves, unless we have our arms twisted and we are forced to tell things. But what I noticed and what this guy was talking about was, we don't even think about this. He has presented something that is so underhanded and so subtle that I bet you even you aren't aware of it. He gives you choices. He gives us so many options and choices that it overwhelms us. And I'm just going to call this the God of options. He gives you the God of options to serve. Hosea 10, verses 1 and 2. How prosperous Israel is, a luxuriant vine loaded with fruit. But the richer the people get, the more pagan altars they build. The more bountiful their harvest, the more beautiful their sacred pillars. The hearts of the people are fickle. They are guilty and must be punished. The Lord will break down their altars and smash their sacred pillars. Now you might sit there and think, well, this doesn't talk about a God of options that Satan presents. This doesn't talk about anything so weird as that. But you see, there's more to it than just this. Not only do we have the options, but when we make our choices, sometimes we're not very happy with them. But sometimes it puts us in a state of mind where we become complacent, just like here. The people became complacent. Oh, we don't need God. Look at all the great stuff that we've got. We got these from the gods of the people. And so they built all these different altars in that. And so when I thought about this and started watching and listening to what was going on around me, really paying attention, it became a major concern to me. Look at the times we live in, especially for our younger generation. We have them making so many decisions and stuff about their lives, and parents aren't stepping in. Parents aren't going, well, wait, time out. Let's talk about this and think about it. And I don't remember exactly what day it was. Amy probably does. But as usual, when I start shutting down for the night and getting ready for bed, I veg out in front of the TV. It's veg. And I overheard one of the prophets that she listens to talking about being on fire for Christ. Now, she and I have talked about this several different occasions since we both heard this. And it reminded me of what it said in Revelation 3:15 and 16. I know your deeds, that you are neither cold nor hot. I wish that you were cold or hot. Because you are lukewarm and neither hot nor cold, I will spit you out of my mouth. And now this was a letter that was sent to the church of Laodicea. And we know that the writers of the time, they used things that would make sense to people at that time. In today's times, if I thought about it long enough, I could come up with something that they would write that we would fully understand. In this area, it might be talking about mining. It might be talking about lumber. It might be talking about schools, whatever. But if we had somebody come and talk to you in the current day, they might describe things to you in a language that you can understand. That city of Laodicea was located between the cities of Hierapolis and Colossae. You know where Colossians was. And both cities were known for pure waters that flowed through them. Hierapolis had a hot spring that was considered to be medicinal. I like sitting in hot springs, makes me feel good. Body absorbs all those minerals, and I feel pretty good getting out of it. If I'm hurting and aching and paining, I'm not so achy and painy when I get out. Colossae was known for its cold, refreshing waters that came out of the mountain springs. I don't know about you, but I like drinking a nice cold glass of water, especially when it's hot or if I've been working really hard or what have you. But Laodicea, on the other hand, had this horrible reputation for bad water. It was renowned for its dirty water, for its lukewarm water, which most of the people that ever drank it immediately spat it out. And this was caused from the hot springs and the cold springs merging together and coming down. So you got this ucky water that was full of these nasty, horrible minerals, probably stunk of sulfur and a bunch of other things. And you could take a drink of it and it was not satisfying at all. Now, a lot of pastors, they like to use this particular passage to say, you know, this says that if you are not hot for Jesus, you're only lukewarm. You got to be either hot for Jesus or cold on Jesus. You got to make a choice. And they like to say this is riding on a fence. But see, I kind of like to keep it in its historical perspective, its historical and scriptural context, which when you read the whole letter, it talks about the spiritual health is to either be hot or cold. You're to be healing or refreshing. Either way, guess what? You're still on fire for Jesus. But when we become complacent, when we become so wealthy that we look at it and we don't think about God at all, it kind of makes us just a little wishy-washy. It's not necessarily offense, but we are more looking at self-sufficiency and complacency. Now let's combine this complacency and this self-sufficiency with the God of choices, with the God of options. And let's use one of my favorite fellas in the Bible to deal with this. Let's turn and look at Elijah. Now we all know who Elijah was. We just saw. He was a prophet. He prayed for no rain, and it didn't rain for 3.5 years. God tells him, hey, during this time I want you to go stay with this widow woman and her son. And he does all kinds of great stuff. They never go hungry. They were on their last meal when he showed up and said, bake me some bread. Well, we were cooking our last meal because it's the last one we're going to have before we're going to end up dying. And he goes, no, do it. And they did it, and they never went hungry for 3.5 years. God tells him, Elijah, go back and see Ahab. Now, we know who Ahab is. He was the most vile king that Israel ever had. He was married to that wonderful creature named Jezebel. So he goes, okay. He goes back down, and he's on his way to go see Ahab. He's being faithful, just like God wants him to do. And he runs across this great character, Obadiah. And I love that name. You know, sometimes I kind of go, it's Obadiah. Obadiah. But he's a really cool guy. He's the chief of staff for Ahab and Jezebel. And he's out looking for food and water. It ain't rained in 3.5 years. And he's supposed to be going out looking for food and water to feed the livestock so that they don't have to kill them off. We're told that Ahab and Jezebel sent out all kinds of assassins to try and kill off Elijah because, well, maybe if this troublemaker is dead, we'll have rain. So he runs across the chief of staff and he goes, go tell Ahab I'm here to see him. Are you nuts? If I tell him that you want to see him and meet him face to face and you don't show, he's going to kill me. And haven't you heard? Even though I work for them under their power, I have 100 prophets hidden in caves. And I've been feeding them for all this time and making sure they have plenty of liquid. If I tell him and you don't show up, I'm a dead man and then the prophets are going to die. And he goes, look, I will be there. I will be there. So he goes and tells him. And when Ahab meets Elijah, Ahab does the thing that most people do nowadays. He accuses him of being a troublemaker when it's really quite the opposite. Who's the troublemaker? Ahab and Jezebel. It's very easy to blame God. I mean, after all, it tells us in Proverbs 19:3, the foolishness of a man ruins his way, and his heart rages against the Lord. That's exactly what Ahab did. He was the one who brought judgment. He was the one who was running Israel, and he had his heart raged against the prophet of the Lord. Elijah tells him he wants to have a showdown. Ahab, we're going to have a showdown. This is what I want from you. Gather all the people of Israel together on Mount Carmel. Then I want you to bring all your prophets of Baal and all your priestesses of Ashtoreth. And let's just see if Baal's a real god or not. Winner take all. 1 Kings 18:19 through 21. Now then send and gather to me all of Israel at Mount Carmel together with 450 prophets of Baal and 400 prophets of Asherah, who eat at Jezebel's table. So Ahab sent a message among all the sons of Israel and brought the prophets together at Mount Carmel. And Elijah, he came near to all the people and said, how long will you hesitate between two opinions? If the Lord is God, follow him. But if Baal, follow him. And guess what? Them people didn't answer. They stood there with that stupid look. They stayed silent. They were trying to hedge their bets. They were complacent with where they were at. They had all these great things taking place. They were complacent. They were trying to cover all those bases, and they would serve more than one God. They didn't say that they had forsaken the Lord completely. Heck, they didn't open their mouths except with that dumb look. And I hate it when the kids give you that look. You say something to them and it's like, and you just see there's nothing there. They just wanted to worship Baal as well as God. Elijah says, you need to make up your mind. Make it up. God commands us to make choices. But only after providing sufficient evidence of what he's desiring and wants. We have sufficient information. Choose. You want God or you want Baal? The very word choice presupposes at least two alternatives. You've got a choice, A and B. Today's world is A through Z. When Joshua, the great military leader of Israel, said to the people in Joshua 24:15, if it is disagreeable in your sight to serve the Lord, choose for yourselves today whom you will serve, whether the gods which your father served, which were beyond the river, or the gods of the Amorites in whose land you are living. But as for me and my house, we will serve the Lord. It's the same thing that Elijah's telling there. And how many years is it now since Joshua was around? Well, let's see. Joshua is before all the judges. We had all them different judges. Then we had all these multiple sets of kings. It's been a long time. And the people, again, did not know the Lord their God. And he tells them before they even get a choice to make, when he asked him the question, he tells him what his choice is. Me and my house will serve the Lord. Cut and dry. Well, we know that all the rest of the people said, okay, if you're going to do that, we will do. 1 Kings 18 through 24. Then Elijah said to the people, I alone am left of the prophet of the Lord, but Baal's prophets are 450 men. Now let them give us 2 oxen, and let them choose 1 ox for themselves and cut it up. And place it on the wood, but put no fire under it. And I will prepare the other ox and lay it on the wood, and I will not put fire under it. Then you call in the name of your God, and I will call in the name of the Lord. And the God who answers by fire, he's God. He's God. And all the people said, ooh, that's a good idea. Now they speak up. And so it's set up that way that the prophets of Baal do their thing. Hundreds of them, praying, and they're not getting any results. None. And Elijah begins to start laughing at them and mocking them. He says to them, maybe he's out relieving himself. Maybe he's taking a nap. Maybe you need to do a little bit louder yelling. 1 Kings 18, 28, 29. So they cried with a loud voice and cut themselves according to their custom with swords and lances until the blood gushed out of them. When midday was past, they raved until the time of the offering of the evening sacrifice. But there was no voice. No one answered and no one paid attention. I love this. Can you imagine seeing the grossness of this? There's human blood, ox blood, everything just all over the place. They're slipping and sliding. They're wore out. They're sweating. And they hear no answer. Then Elijah, he sets up the altar. He rebuilds it. Gets the 12 stones, rebuilds it. Slaughters the bull on that altar. And then he does the one thing that's really kind of cool. And I'm going to make things interesting. He says, fill 4 jars with water and pour it on the burnt offering and on the wood. Pour it on. And so they do. And he tells them, that's not enough. Do it again. So they go, okay. They do it again. He goes, now do it a 3rd time. And so they do. And the water was so heavy that it ran off of the cut up pieces, ran off of the altar, and filled up a trench that they dug around the altar. See, he's trying to make this as difficult as possible for himself. There is no confusing, and you all know the story, what happens. He called for that showdown. He called for it. I want you to call them on Mount Carmel, which is in the deep heart of Baal territory. So we're going on the road. We're playing on the road. And and I know that they've got this advantage. They got 850 guys and gals and all this stuff. And we let them choose. We let them go first. We let them make the attempt to score first. And then we turn around and we make it as difficult as possible on us. They're praying all day long. They've got themselves so cut up, they're probably almost dead from bleeding to death. And their wood is so dry that if you even breathed a spark to it, the whole thing would flame up. Good thing none of them had a little magnifying glass to get that sun to get it going. After all, Baal is the god of thunder and lightning and rain and all this other fun junk. Baal couldn't even produce that little spark to get that whole sacrifice going. 1 Kings 18, 36 through 38. At the time of the offering of the evening sacrifice, Elijah the prophet came near and said, O Lord, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Israel, today let it be known that you are a God in Israel and that I am your servant, and I have done all these things at your word. Answer me, O Lord, answer me that this people may know that you, O Lord, are God, and that you have turned their heart back again. Then the fire of the Lord fell and consumed the burnt offering and the wood and the stones and the dust and licked up the water that was in the trench. He sent fire down that vaporized everything. I can just picture from the description that there was nothing but a charred hole where everything was. It's a black hole. Those people probably hit the ground so fast it make your head spin. Their faces to the ground, they called out, "The Lord, He is God! The Lord, He is God!" Is this what it takes to wake people up today? A massive miracle. Fire from heaven. Is this what it's going to take?
God said so.
And show the power to decide to worship and obey the one true God? Is this what it's going to take? When the people were challenged to make a choice, they seemed unable or unwilling to make a choice. What if I chose wrong? We know that he told the people, grab all them prophets, kill them. kill them. But you see, they wanted to hedge their bets and sit on the fence and keep their options open when they were asked. They were neither hot or cold for God. Are we any different today? Is our society any different? Yeah, see, I like all them head shakes. Would you prefer to make an ironclad choice about something, ironclad, or would you like to have the opportunity to back out if need be? Do you ever find yourself afraid to commit? Do you reply to party invitations with, maybe I'll show, instead of a yes or no? When you're talking with people after church, do you constantly look over your shoulder and go, as someone's talking to you, man, can I find a better conversational partner after church? Do you leave your phone on, no matter where you're at? Do you leave your phone on so that you're really not there? Because if that phone even dinged or vibrated, because I know most of y'all got it on silent here in church, if that phone vibrated, would I see you pull it out of your pocket?
Are we supposed to answer this truthfully?
Yeah. But no, I don't necessarily need you to answer it truthfully because you already know the answer.
We already know who's calling my mom.
If all of this is a possibility, like I said, I'm not real big on saying raise your hand so you can show everybody what's going on in your brain, because that's kind of mean and cruel. Because then everybody goes, well, do I raise my hand? What if I'm the only one? Oh, no, I'm sorry, that's an option. What if I'm the only one? Then people will know just what kind of a person I really am. But if you do all of this, if all these things, you're looking for option after option after option, are we worshiping the God of options? Am I hedging my bet? Am I being complacent in the world that I live in? As a culture, we demand choice. We want tons of choices. You can look at Starbucks. As an example, if you're a Starbucks drinker, which I'm not. But look at the choices. Go to any fast food restaurant and how many choices you have. And what else do we have on top of the multiple choices? We make a choice and we go, we want it now. Now.
And it doesn't happen now.
You see, we demand those options. I want multiple choices. We imagine that the more options that we have means we have more freedom. Well, look at all this. I'm so free. I can go to any other country in the whole world and I can say, you only get to choose this or this. Look, I got 50 of them that I can choose from. Most people think that limitless freedom must be a good option. However, with all of the choices that we have, are you truly happy? I know the more choices I have, the more I have to think about it. The more I have to think about it, the more indecisive I get.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And then when I do finally make a choice, did I make the right choice?
Yeah.
Am I going to regret it? It can be so overwhelming. And it can suck out the joy of committing to anything or anyone. It sucks out the joy. Ecclesiastes 2:10 and 11. All that my eyes desire, I did not refuse them. I did not withhold my heart from any pleasure, for my heart was pleased because of all the labor, and this was my reward for all my labor. Thus I considered all my activities which my hands had done, and the labor which I had exerted, and behold, it was all vanity and striving after wind, and there was no profit under the sun. even when we do make a commitment, when we make a choice, our culture makes us feel dissatisfied with the choice that we've made. It seems that the more options we have, the more afraid we are of choosing. And that's so sad. We have become enslaved to being non-committal. Non-committal. People could ask me a question, and if it's one where I have multiple choices, I might be the one going, huh? I don't know. We don't want to make a mistake or cut down our options. It's not like it used to be, eeny, meeny, miny, moe. Catch a tiger by the toe. You only had 2 to pick from. And even then, if you chose the wrong one, it wasn't that much of a major disappointment at the time. But as we do this, are we worshiping an idol? Over the years, the Israelites had seen themselves delivered from slavery. They had repeatedly and spectacularly and miraculously by the living God had performed all kinds of great things in front of them. They knew who God was. They knew who the other peoples worshipped. And like we said in the past, the stuff that other people worship, sometimes it looks like it's a lot more fun than what we worship. We're held to a strict standard. Look at the fun they're having. Yeah, but are they? All those Egyptian gods were powerless against God. Over all the peoples of the lands, the Canaanites, the Hittites, the Amorites, the Perizzites, the Hivites, and the Jebusites, they were all powerless. God just wiped them off the face of the earth. Yet here they are in 1 Kings 18, their faces licking the dust off the ground before Baal, worshiping another soon-to-be defeated God. And that's what should disgust us. Do we know who God is? Do we know how powerful He is? And yet, do our minds and our eyes wander? As God's people today, how different are we? I'm sorry, I'm kind of glued to my phone a little bit. I hate to admit that. I like my little social media. I watch, look at all the stupid things on Facebook. But last week, remember, we are free, truly free. That's what we're told in Galatians 5:1. It was for freedom that Christ set us free. Therefore, keep standing firm and do not be subject again to a yoke of slavery. We have been delivered from slavery to sin by Christ's death and resurrection, spectacularly and miraculously. And yet, here we are, many of us worshiping the very gods that Christ has triumphed over. We worship the God of options. Think about the last, for a while. Think about what you've seen in your life, what you've experienced. Think about the things that you hear people talking about. It's not a firm decision on a lot of things. We know that the God of options is a defeated God, and it will only drag us to our deaths if we cling to them. Options. I got to have so many options. I can't make a decision anymore. My brain is mush. We worship the God of options, and He is killing us. He's killing us. He kills our relationships because He tells us it's better not to become too involved. Oh, He kills our service to others because He tells us it might be better to keep our weekends to ourselves. He kills our giving because He tells us that, wow, these are really uncertain financial times and we might need the money. He kills our joy in Christ because He tells us it's better not to be thought of as too spiritual. What is the most frightening of all about the God of options is that you may not even know you're worshiping Him. Whatever. You might not even know. Because he pretends to not to be a God at all. I'm just giving you options. In fact, he promises you freedom from all gods, all responsibilities. Keep your options open, he says. It, he, she, whatever.
They, them.
Worship me, and you don't have to serve anything or anyone. No commitment necessary. Total freedom. Similarly, the Israelites thought that by saying nothing, when they were told, choose, and they said nothing, they figured out, well, if we don't choose anything, we're not really worshiping an idol. But when they decided not to choose, they made a choice. It was the wrong choice. Now, some modern translation describes God's people as wavering. But when you look at the Hebrew, it's a closer word to limping. They're just limping along. Their indecision was crippling them. The living God, the loving triune God, did not create us to keep our options open. We're not to do that. He didn't create us to live in fear of making a choice. God created us to commit, but to Him and not to others. He created us to choose. Joshua 1, 7 through 8. Be strong and very courageous. Be careful to obey all the instructions Moses gave you. Do not deviate from them, turning either to the right or to the left. Then you will be successful in everything you do. Study this book of instruction continuously. Meditate on it day and night so that you will be sure to obey everything written in it. Only then will you prosper and succeed in all you do. Ooh, we're supposed to rely on God. We're supposed to trust His Word. And when we do, we're going to be successful in everything that we do. But maybe you're keeping your options open with God Himself, not allowing yourself to become too committed. If that's the case, Elijah's speaking to you. Make a choice. You have all the information about God you need. Enough of this non-committal, risk-adverse, weak-willed, God-forgetting immaturity. Or as it probably says in some of the most modern translations of the Bible, grow up. I want to find that translation. Maybe that's the one in the Message translation. The God of open options is cruel and a vindictive God. He will break your heart. He will not let anyone get too close. But at the same time, because He is so spiteful, He will not let anyone get too far away, because that would mean they are no longer an option. Their loyalty is divided between God and the world. And they are unstable in everything they do. What does it tell us in James 1? 6b through 8. Do not waver, for a person with divided loyalty is as unsettled as a wave of the sea that is blown and tossed by the wind. Such people should not expect to receive anything from the Lord. Make a decision. On and on it continues, exhausting and frustrating and confusing and endless, pulling towards and then pushing away like a tide on a beach. The God of open options is also a liar. He promises you that by keeping your options open, you can have everything and everyone. But in the end, you get nothing and no one. Deuteronomy 30 verses 19 and 20 tells us, this day I call the heavens and the earth as witnesses against you, that I have set before you life and death, blessings and curses. Now choose life, so that you and your children may live, and that you may love the Lord your God. Listen to His voice and hold fast to Him. For the Lord is your life, and He will give you many years in the land that He swore to give to your fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Choose the God. Choose the God of infinite possibility, who chose to limit Himself to a particular time. a particular place and a particular people. He chose us. He chose us. Choose the God who closed off all other alternatives so that he could pursue for himself one bride. Choose the God who chose not to come down off that cross until that bride was won. Choose the narrow way. Let's go to prayer. Heavenly Father, we